Welcome into 49ers Access. My name is Sterling Bennett, and today we are going to react to day number 7, practice number 6 of San Francisco 49ers training camp. There's so much to dive in today. We saw move the ball drills for the first time. We had some 1v1s for the first time with pads on at training camp. There was a little scuffle, which I'm calling a fight, for the first time since we've been back at Levi Stadium watching Niners training camp. It was a really good day for the offense at the beginning, and it was a really good day for the defense at the end. Gonna dive into Brock Purdy's 4-interception performance. Gonna talk about who stood out, who was lackluster, and really overall cover everything we saw on day number 7 of San Francisco 49ers training camp. I want to quickly ask you to like, share, and subscribe. I want to say what's up to Jimmy and Rob Smith in the YouTube chat. What's going on, guys? Hope you're having a wonderful, Tuesday? Tuesday afternoon, Tuesday night if you're on the East Coast, like Rob, who's in New Jersey. But without any more waiting, let's dive into what transpired at Niners training camp today. It was the longest practice of training camp by far. It was grueling. It was hot out there at Santa Clara at Levi Stadium. And for the second day, we got to see our Niner players, the fans, out there watching them with pads on. And look, you know what that means. People were going to fight. Last year, there was a major scuffle on the field. Jauan, Jennings, and I can't remember who else was involved in the fight last year, but that was a practice-stopping fight. It was hit the brakes. You had guys being tossed around, thrown around. Today was not as bad, although it's harder to get, or it's hard to be as bad as that was last year because they had to, again, stop practice entirely. Today, different story. A minor scuffle, if you will, between rookie Jarrett Kingston and defensive lineman T.Y. McGill. Basically, one of them took exception to the other. There was some pushing, there was some shoving, there had to be some separation, but by all means, not as bad as Jauan Jennings' scuffle last year at training camp. And through the first 7 days, a less eventful training camp thus far. No fights. Last year saw Kyle Shanahan yelling at a NFL rep, Dwayne Allen, who used to play for the Colts, because of player safety. So not as eventful thus far. Fingers crossed doesn't get to that point because that was a very unique experience at training camp last season. Like we always do, let's talk about the absences, and no new updates between Trent Williams or Brandon Ayuk in regards to them holding out and them holding in. But after practice about, 35, maybe 40 minutes ago, the Chicago Bears just extended wide receiver DJ Moore to a 4-year, $110 million contract, giving him a $27.5 million AAV. So it's per year, $27.5 million. That ranks 7th in the NFL. And they gave him what's been reported as $82.6 million guaranteed. That is 3rd in the NFL amongst wide receivers. So per year, 7th most against for wide receivers, guaranteed the 3rd most. And I can't think of a receiver contract that mimics what you want in Brandon Ayuk. We've talked about for a long time how Ayuk's contract could be the best of both worlds. You get Jalen Waddle's, $27.5 million per year, his average, right? But you get an Amon-Ra St. Brown-like guarantee. The DJ Moore contract is essentially what I've been preaching to give Brandon Ayuk. You give him a little more than Amon-Ra St. Brown's guarantee, but you give him closer to Jalen Waddle's per year average. I think if you're looking for a deal to get done in the next week or so, and if San Francisco has an offer on the table, if you're Brandon Ayuk and you can't get $30 million, go for the higher guarantee. You can take less per year, get the higher guarantee. We've been preaching that for months on the show, but other than that, both those guys weren't at practice. Trent Williams still holding out, Brandon Ayuk still holding in. We had a couple absences today, a couple injuries today. No vet days off for anybody. But there was some injuries. Isaac Guerrero has the hamstring. He's still not practicing. You have John Feliciano. He has a knee injury. Not exactly sure how serious it is still. He didn't practice. Spencer Burford with the broken hand. Still hasn't had surgery. Obviously is not practicing. Jacob Cowling and Tay Martin, both receivers, have hamstring injuries. I would assume Tay Martin's probably going to be back in the next few days, likely after the Thursday off day. So I'd expect him to be back on Friday, whereas Jacob Cowling will be back probably next week for the team. Then Renardo Green, who had a great practice yesterday, was not out there today. There was no updates from Kyle Shanahan or Brian Schneider, the coach who talked in the postgame press conference. It was just Renardo Green is not on the field. We have no idea why. We hope it's not serious, but want to give you everything we know. Renardo Green, after a really good practice yesterday, did not practice today. Other than that, there's really not much else to discuss in regards to who didn't practice. It's now all what happened on the gridiron in between the white lines. And again, today, we got move the ball drills for the first time, and we also got 1v1s. I do want to highlight the offensive line today a lot because it's been pretty bad the past few practices. Better yesterday, first day of pads. They can kind of fight back a little more, but not having Jake Brendel, Burford, and Feliciano certainly hurt them. Jake Brendel came back today, which definitely helped them. But in 1v1s, the offensive line really picked things up. I think Dominick Puni, who I think many fans want him to start this year, whether it's the right tackle or right guard, this was his best practice by far. Right guard with the first team, and worked a little bit at left guard today. Not too much, kind of a smidge, I think, just to see what he can do over there. But this was his best practice by far, and I think it's been 6 practices, right? 7 days, 6 practices, and through those 6 days, 2 with pads, mind you, he's already shown he's a very quick learner, and today he looked really refined. I think for rookies, offensive linemen, it's not really hard to adapt to the NFL, but there are a lot of things you look for. How do they adapt? How do you pick up blitzes? How do you pick up stunts? And I think today was a really good example of what Puni can do. I think Puni at right guard, which is where he was at today, Kali, or Kyle Young, excuse me, in the YouTube chat. I think today was a really good example of him picking up blitzes, picking up stunts, and showing what he can do, where he doesn't really seem fazed by what the defense so far has thrown his way. And I think, for a team that really wants to find stability on the right side of the offensive line, for a team that's banking on their 3rd round pick this year to actually, be productive for them or even play some meaningful snaps in the playoff game, today was a really good example of what Dominick Puni could be in year number 1. Now again, there's no declarative statements being made here about Dominick Puni, but really good day. For example, there was a play during team drills where Fred Warner blitzes, Dominick Puni picks up the Warner blitz, then passes Warner off to, I think it was Jake Brendel at center, and then picks up the looping defensive line going around him. So really good job picking up the blitz, being aware of his surroundings, didn't just focus on Warner, realized, hey, I got to be at Warner, and having the wherewithal, the peripheral, to pass him off, realize you got to get back to your right and pick up the blitz. Really good job by him. I think we are seeing, although again, through 6 practices, a really quick growth, I will say, that I would not be shocked that we see him starting sooner rather than later. I think if he keeps up what he did today, I would not be shocked if come, early in the year, if Burford's not healthy and Feliciano's not healthy, Puni may not give that job up. Now, again, it's 6 practices. Let's not be crazy here, but really good day from Dominick Puni. Won the majority of his 1v1s, had good reps against Jordan Elliott, T.Y. McGill, and Evan Anderson. Now, that's not Hargrave or, Malik Collins and Bosa and whatnot, but, it's Jordan Elliott's supposed to be a big piece of this defensive line rotation. Evan Anderson got, I think, the largest guaranteed contract for a UDFA this year. And I think McGill's played in the NFL for the last 4 seasons. And so it's good stuff for a third-round pick to come in and kind of assert himself against those players that aren't scrubs by any means, and this team actually believes in. So Dominick Puni, a really, really good day in his practice number 6 in day 2 of pads. Moving on to Jalen Moore. Jalen Moore in the first on the first rep got beat by Leonard Floyd, and it was just boom. Okay, rep's over. You got beat, but it was good to see him bounce back in 1v1s, pick up some W's on his end, and it's kind of, for a rough start to the first couple of days of training camp and even today's practice in 1v1s, picked himself back up. You got beat. You got to move on, right? It's like a pitcher in baseball. So what? It's a home run. Get back out there, throw some strikes, and get some outs, right? Same thing for an offensive lineman. You are going to get beat. How do you react? Today, really, really nice reaction from Jalen Moore. Liked what I saw. The offensive line, although gave up some pressures today, was not as big of a story as it had been the past, 3 or 4 practices. Today was much more, playing together, right? Much more giving the quarterbacks time to throw. Yes, again, there was some pressures, but a much better performance today all around from the offensive line, mainly Jalen Moore and Dominick Puni. I want to go to defense for a split second here. Nick Bosa, he's supposed to do this, but he made Colton McKivitz look like a backup right tackle. He had some fun today with Colton McKivitz on 1v1s, beat him with ease, and it was like, yep, there's Nick Bosa. But Javon Hargrave beat Aaron Banks a few times. I think it was both times with the bull rush. You can definitely tell that Hargrave is in the best shape we've seen him in here in San Francisco. Really good day for Javon Hargrave. His quote-unquote new body, it definitely was on display today, and it was a good sign for a player that he admitted that wasn't his best last year. Got hurt, and I'll be honest with you, being in person at the podium, seeing Javon Hargrave this year to last year, as a big man last year. This year, although still a big man, a much more proportioned man, if you will. Not as thick in the trunk, I will say. Again, still a big man. You don't want to see that guy in the dark alley, but not as big, not as lumbering around. Much more. He's quicker. He's faster on his feet, and in a good place physically. That is Javon Hargrave. Back to the offense for the next couple players here. Cody Schrader, who I think, while again still a dark horse to make the roster, I think has surprised many people. He's a UDFA out of Missouri. Mind you, really good at Missouri, but when you're in a running back room that has McCaffrey and Mitchell and Mason and Grendo, who was a mid-round pick this year, and the expectation isn't you make the roster. Well, Grendo's not practicing, and today, building off of yesterday's good practice, I don't think he lost a single rep in 1v1s. Really solid back-to-back days. He's quick. He's agile. He has quick cuts. He's very decisive with his runs. I think for young running backs that aren't used to the wide zone scheme, there's a lot of hesitancy there. And for Cody Schrader, it was decisive as decisive can be. It was quick cuts, boom, sees the hole, go. We have a question here. Who's taller, Cody Schrader or Jacob Cowing? I'll tell you what, Rob. I made a point to look at that during OTAs. I think Cody Schrader's smaller than Jacob Cowing, who they're both listed at 5'9". Cody Schrader's thicker, obviously, but I think Cody Schrader might be closer to 5'8" than 5'9". I'll be perfectly honest with you. He's a tiny, tiny man, but I think he's very decisive, very quick on his feet. And again, you have to be decisive in a wide zone scheme when you're young. Sometimes it takes some players a little bit of time when they're a UDFA. Don't get a lot of reps, and it takes them a while to get going, right? Cody Schrader's not been that guy so far. Now, am I saying he'll be the RB2? No. He may not even make the roster, but I will say through the last 2 days, and honestly through the entirety of training camp, he's looked really good. And Kyle Juszczyk today praised him a lot, how smart he is, and just kind of gushed about Cody Schrader, and I'm really not shocked about that because, through 6 practices, through 7 days, Cody Schrader looks darn good. And I would love to have him be on this team because whether it's kick returns or a depth piece, I think he can bring something that a young player might not. And Cody Schrader, if he is cut, he is going to get swooped up so fast. And I wouldn't be shocked if it's a team like Philadelphia or the Colts. Both those teams love running backs, and both those teams like to hoard running backs against their opponents. So Cody Schrader, through 7 days, been really good so far. Another solid day for another young player, Cam Latu. I never thought I would gush about Cam Latu in back-to-back days, and here I am. Now, it wasn't a perfect day. It wasn't a great day, but another solid day for Cam Latu, getting in on the action in back-to-back days. Rarely is seen by him. I had a big catch today over Jair Brown. Small good moments, but otherwise another solid day. And I think again for him, be consistent. I don't want to see a great catch and 3 drops. You want to see consistency with those hands, and today he did that. So good signs from Cam Latu. Maybe he's finally, kind of putting it all together. And trust me, they need tight ends. Logan Thomas hasn't done much. Eric Sauber, as of now, is your penciled-in tight end number 2. Jake Tungs and Mason Pline hasn't done a lot, or haven't done a lot so far. So you're kind of hoping Cam Latu can pick things up and kind of progress in the way you want to for a former 3rd-round pick. Then there's Braden Willis, who really had a good day. Didn't catch everything, still some work to do, but there was some glimpses of what he was like at Oklahoma. Now, not to toot my own horn, I'm Boomer Sooner for life, and I know what Braden Willis can do, and there's a reason why I was loving this pick in the 7th round last year. There's a reason why he was on the field in the Super Bowl. Now, didn't play well in that game, mind you, but I think today Braden Willis put together a good day, finally using his frame. He's a big guy. Use your frame. Today, Braden Willis, use his frame. You got a big body, man. That's how you overpower nickelbacks and safeties and linebackers. They're not 6'5". They're not 6'4". Use your body. Today, Braden Willis used his body. Be an NBA player. Box some dudes out. Go up and get it. Today, Willis did that. It was good to see. I do want to highlight Malik Mustafa for a second because, again, this kid is really special. But had a really phenomenal pass block on a Braden Willis rep in 1v1s. Locked him up, just knocked the ball down, aggressive through the air. Really nice stuff from Malik Mustafa, which brings us to Tariq Owens, the son of Hall of Fame wide receiver and Niner great Terrell Owens. Now, I want to preface this by saying the odds Tariq Owens makes this team are slim to none, but he showed off today. And I think for a player that, and we talked about him during the UDFA scouting report, he doesn't have the reps. He just doesn't have the experience behind him. But I think if he can be practice squatted, if that's even how you phrase that, for 2 or 3 years, I think you could see him become something. Now, what is that something? Who knows? But there definitely is something there. And I think, in his first real practice where he got some real reps, looked pretty sharp. In 1v1s, he went against primarily Samuel Womack and Ambry Thomas. He beat them both twice today. In fact, he beat Ambry Thomas for a go ball touchdown, which if you're Ambry Thomas, you got to feel some kind of shame, brother. Like, you're getting beat by a UDFA, an undrafted receiver, and you're a former 3rd-round pick. I mean, at some point, we got to see some fire from you, and definitely was not on display today. Got beat by Tariq Owens today. Then later in team drills, Tariq Owens caught a, 50, 60-yard, 40-yard touchdown pass from Brandon Allen in coverage against Rock Ya-Sin and Taylor Hawkins. So if you're counting on your fingers, 2 touchdowns today, big ones for Tariq Owens, beat Ambry Thomas, Rock Ya-Sin, and safety Taylor Hawkins. Really good stuff today. Again, he's not going to beat out Deebo, Ayuk, Pearsall, Jennings, Cowing, and a Chris Conley or Trent Taylor or whatnot, but a really, really good day from a young player that just needs the reps. Lori Matthews in the chat here saying, I heard Tanner Mordecai is making some noise. Well, Lori, there was a report out there that said that Mordecai will work with the second team. That's not entirely true. He had 2 reps on the day in regards to move the ball drills, 1 for 2. One of those plays was a drop by Ricky Pearsall. So he looked relatively sharp. It wasn't an amazing day. Definitely isn't, going up the depth chart anytime soon, but Tanner Mordecai getting his first few reps. I will say this, that the only reason Tanner Mordecai likely even got reps is because there were longer practices today. Even last year, and in fact 2 years ago, for Brock Purdy and for Brandon Allen last year, those guys only saw reps when it was a long practice day, when it was like a 12-period day or 11-period practice. Today was one of those days where Tanner Mordecai may not get reps for the next 5 practices. But today, in a very small 2-rep sample size, not bad. I don't think he's making the roster, but not a bad 2-rep sample size from Tanner Mordecai. Once you see him in person, that throwing motion is weird. It's weird, but you'll see that come preseason. But a good day from Tanner Mordecai, and again, only 2 reps. Jauan Jennings didn't do anything crazy, but just want to say, won every single rep of 1v1s. You can tell that he is enjoying that new contract, and I'm not sure if you guys saw the him being mic'd up on the Niners YouTube channel. It's really interesting, but he loves to talk, and I don't blame him. And today he was talking a lot. He was making sure every single DB and receiver knew, hey, I haven't been beat today. Somebody step up and beat me, and no one could. Really good day from Jauan Jennings. Went up and got a big ball up in the air, caught it. It was like, wow, this guy, for a player that is somehow still underrated, his Madden rating is atrocious if you look into that kind of stuff. But Jauan Jennings, I think, he's comfortable now. He's financially comfortable, and this fits this scheme to a T. He is the perfect San Francisco 49er. He's a great guy, and I think now becoming a leader for the team. I really do see that in him through the first 6 days since getting that new contract. Really good stuff from Jauan Jennings. Rocky Sin, despite getting beaten team drills, was one of the better cornerbacks in 1v1s. Physical, very physical, to a point of being a little grabby, but beat Ronnie Bell twice today. Ronnie Bell had no chance. It was all Rocky Sin. Just a good day from the depth piece, that a guy that's kind of fighting for a fringe roster spot. Good day from Rocky Sin, and an overall good 1v1 period from him. Moving on to D. Winters. Not a lot to say about T. Winters. In fact, I would go on a limb and say that the linebacker 3 position is going to be an issue. You're kind of hoping and praying Dre Greenlaw comes back soon, but that third linebacker is probably going to be a young player unless they want to retain Curtis Robinson, which I could see. He's been getting a lot of first-team reps in Greenlaw's absence, but Bethune didn't do much today, not his greatest performance. But I will say D. Winters had a really good rep today against Christian McCaffrey, of all people, and he locked him up. He caused the incompletion. He didn't do anything, and I think, for a young linebacker that may or may not start this year in Greenlaw's absence, for a young player that, didn't get much reps last year, and for a young player that really needs to prove himself. And we heard Kyle Shanahan talk about it, it may have been last week, about Winters, really taking a step forward this year. A good rep to lock up the offensive player of the year, the reigning offensive player of the year, which doesn't happen often. So if I was him, I would take that home, put it in the back of your head and say, I can do this all the time. It's one of those statement plays, maybe not for your coaches, which it might be, but more for yourself, of like, I just locked up Christian McCaffrey. Okay, maybe I do belong. And I think for a player that you just want to instill confidence in, you want to, you want him to feel like he can do this, because you're going to need him with Greenlaw off the field, with not really having a bona fide third linebacker. In fact, even Devondre Campbell wasn't great today, I will say. But at least he's a vet. And I think for D. Winters, Tatum Bethune, Jalen Graham, Curtis Robinson, that third linebacker spot's up for grabs. And if Winters can start to believe in himself and put together consistent reps, you're going to see good things from him. Which brings us to the quarterback, Brock Purdy. What a day. What a last 2 days for Brock Purdy. Let's put the 1v1s behind us and talk about move the ball drills. It was a roller coaster ride. It was a California screaming and Incredicoaster, Splash Mountain, Big Dipper kind of day. It was a lot of ups and a lot of downs and some twists and turns and loop-de-loops and pulls. And his shoes were not looking cool if you're a big SpongeBob fan because, oh my, Brock Purdy yesterday throws 3 interceptions. We dove into the context behind that. Today, it looked like he was bouncing back. We're following along on Twitter. If you're there at practice watching him play, started off hot. And we're talking scorching. We're talking 28th ranked player in the NFL according to the NFL Top 100 list. He started 7 for 7. He had Deebo Samuel. He pump faked Isaac Yiadom. Had Deebo Samuel downfield for about 60 yards in stride, perfect touchdown. Just was like, wow. A guy who had been missing his deep shots downfield, Brock Purdy was in lockstep with the receivers downfield in the early portions of practice and moved the ball drills. Really good stuff. 60-yard touchdown pass through the air, in stride, right in the Deebo Samuel's hand. It was just like, bang. Like, okay. Later in team drills, hits a crosser downfield to Deebo Samuel, perfect in stride. Has a quick out to George Kittle, nice throw. Then even later in practice, before things kind of went awry, pressure gets to him, steps up in the pocket, maneuvers to his left out of the pocket, and delivers this just perfect rainbow floater to Christian McCaffrey for 35 yards and a touchdown in stride. It was like, yes, this is the bounce back we're talking about. He comes out on fire, making a point, and you're like, yep, this is the franchise quarterback. And you're sitting there and you're clapping and you're like, man, this is the guy. Like, they're going to win the Super Bowl, and you're feeling yourself. Brock Purdy's feeling himself. The team's like, heck yeah, man. Everyone's talking and chatting, and you're like, oh, this is going to be a good practice. Defense is on their toes. They're reeling. And then everything goes to hell. And you're like, what happened? It was like they went and they were ascending and ascending and ascending. And as soon as they headed down that roller coaster, there was no tracks. It was just interception after interception after interception after interception. And it was like, you're sitting there like, oh my God. We have no words to describe what we've just seen. But I'll do my best to give you context into Brock Purdy's 4-interception day. Let's talk about how things started. Okay, there was a pass across the middle. We just didn't see Fred Warner. Fred Warner drops the interception. He jumped in front of a pass intended for Chris Conley. That was kind of the first blip on the radar for Brock Purdy, again, who was 7 for 7 through the air in his first 7 attempts. So he's perfect. Then that happens, and you're like, oh, it's one pass. Wasn't a great one. Could have been an interception, but not great. A little bit later, then he didn't see Lenoir for an almost interception. He dropped that one, and you're like, okay, that's back-to-back almost picks. That's not a great look after being perfect through your first 7 throws. Then it was, I think it was like 5 for his last 7 attempts for interceptions. It was really bad. And again, we'll try to dissect what these were, but he throws his first pick to, I think it was Jair Brown, who he was intending to throw to Deebo Samuel. Threw the ball too low and behind Deebo. You could argue on this play that if it was an actual regular season game, he would have scrambled, or Leonard Floyd would have got a sack, which Leonard Floyd has been really good through training camp so far against Jalen Moore and Colton McKivitz. But this is one of those throws where it's like, okay, it could have been a sack. You could have scrambled. Maybe he forced the ball here. Other than that, though, really not a great throw. It was low and behind, just not great. So it gets picked off. Next play, like the Fred Warner and the Lenoir almost interceptions, throws a pick right to Demetrius Flanagan Falls. Like, didn't see him, over the middle, and you're just like, brother, like, okay, that's 4 passes. 2 could have been picks, 2 were picks. What's going on here? A little bit later, he tries to throw to Jauan Jennings downfield. George Odom jumps in front of it and picks it off. This was a play that I think Jauan could have been it definitely hit Jauan in the hands. This play could have certainly been more of a Jennings effort. But Odom gets the pick. It's an interception. Not great. You're throwing 3 picks. You go from 7 for 7 to 3 picks in a row, essentially. And you're like, it could have been 5 picks. And you're like, holy crap. And a little bit later. I mean, it's crazy how quickly things turned to just mush for Brock Purdy. Deep throw down the field. There was a pass to Deebo Samuel cutting inside, sorry, my notes are crazy here. Deebo Samuel cutting to the out route. Lenoir cuts in front of it and gets a pick 6. And it's like, where's the anticipation? What are you seeing on the field that makes you want to make those throws? Like, you're not questioning Brock Purdy as a quarterback, but you are questioning the decision-making of the throw of, like, what are you doing here? Now, I think one thing you have to point out is that it definitely felt like one of those practices, and it's not to excuse Brock Purdy's 4 interceptions. 4 picks is 4 picks, and it sinks, and it just sucks, right? It turns a great practice into a frankly crappy one. And you're just like, what? How? But I will say this. It definitely felt like there was this intention to keep forcing throws, intention to, whether it was test small windows, whether it was, try to make the throws you wouldn't normally try to make. Now, some of them were not that way. The DFF one was certainly that. Just didn't see him. The Warner and Lenoir almost picks were not that. But there were throws like the one that was eventually picked off by Lenoir, the one that was picked off by George Odom, right? Where the Odom one was high pointed, Jauan couldn't bring it down and got picked off. That's a throw that, Purdy might try to make, or it's a throw you try to make in practice to see if it works in the games, right? So, it's not like Brock Purdy was, throwing right to linebackers every single interception, but there was a couple bad ones. The decision-making was certainly in question. Now, not being a coach, not being on the field, not being, in that room, I'm never going to assume that I know what the plan of practice is. That's one of the big things they preach there to the media. It's like, look, try things, try new things, force throws, do things. Papa J here says, during training camp, my coaches would make us throw downfield no matter what, test the corners out exactly. I don't know if that was the plan. It certainly could have been. You're never going to excuse interceptions. You don't want to do that. But it's just that without knowing the true context, all we have is poor decision-making, throws that you may not want to attempt during games, but if there's a place to try it, it's certainly practice. I can go back to my days playing baseball for 18 years. I used to pitch, and there's a reason why you throw bullpens. It's to work on your junk and spot things and try new changeup grips and curveball grips and slider grips, and you work on things. And sometimes those things takes weeks and months and stuff. So I'm not going to come on here and bash Brock Purdy. Yes, great start. Yes, terrible finish. But it also, some throws were bad, yes, but it also felt like there was some ulterior motives behind some throws that weren't just, I don't know what's going on, I'll throw it up. It was, I'm trying to do things and work on stuff, which is exactly what you want from your quarterback in day 6 of training camp, right? What you want. So, I think they'll go back and watch the film today or maybe tomorrow morning, and he'll see his mistakes. He'll see you can't throw right to Fred Warner. You can't see right. You can't throw right, to DFF or Lenoir. Like, the whole point of practice is to practice and try new things. Again, it doesn't excuse 4 interceptions, but the title, Brock Purdy throws 4 interceptions like Dov Kleiman puts out there, that's misleading. You need to add some context to what's going on. It's like, and it's really funny now that everybody cares about context, although they didn't the last couple of years, but I digress. That's my own issue. It just feels like, you're going to want to test your receivers, you're going to want to test your cornerbacks and your defensive backs, and also you want to test yourself. If this became a recurring issue, now mind you, it is back-to-back days of 3+ interceptions, which is not great. But if this becomes an every practice thing where it's like we're into next week and it's like he's throwing 2 picks every single day and it's looking ugly, then that's when it becomes a real conversation. But I wouldn't make too much of it today. Was it bad? Yeah. But it's not like he was terrible the whole day because he was perfect to begin the practice. And I'm not talking perfect because, just to say that. He was literally perfect. And we're talking perfect, perfect quarterback rating, 2 touchdowns. This team's winning 14-0 in the first quarter. Perfect. Of like quick start, hot start, night to the Cardinals or the Seahawks in a game because Purdy's on his stuff, right? So just want to put together complete full practices. We've seen much better from Purdy, and we've seen much worse. Purdy's never been afraid to throw interceptions, whether it's in games or in practice. He'll take risks. I've always said he has some Brett Favre to him. He's going to be a gunslinger. You have to let him try things to almost convince himself he can't do it. And even then, he's going to do it anyways. That's what makes you win games. That's what separates you from the game manager to, the Super Bowl champion. So if it continues, we'll have a different conversation, but just let Brock be Brock. You heard him today in the Tim Cavalcante podcast that he knows he's the guy. He wants to be the guy. And he even said, when asked about, now that you know you're the guy, what's the mindset? He was like, to not be complacent, to go out there and still get better every single day. And I think that's kind of the mindset of like, look, I'm going to try new things and do new things, and it may not be pretty, but we're going to do what we can now to make sure in January and hopefully February, it's all refined to a point of actually winning a championship. So not a great practice, but overall not a, oh my goodness, Brock Purdy has 4 interceptions. What do we do? Just sit back, relax, and enjoy tomorrow's practice as well. I do want to highlight Jauan Lenoir again, though, because, again, he had the almost pick. He had the pick 6 off of Brock Purdy, but during 1v1s, this dude was locking up Deebo Samuel. At that point in 1v1s, also had another interception. And this kid almost had 3 interceptions today. Lenoir was looking like a shutdown, lockdown cornerback where you're like, pay this man now. He's feisty. He plays angry. He gets his hand on people, and it's like, brother, like this is what you want. And again, honestly, they're going to have to decide to pay Mooney Ward or Lenoir. It's going to be a tough conversation to have. I hope it's both in some way, but Lenoir is just 2 years ago came onto the scene. Last year was really good. This year, I think, can get even better. And he was already really good last year and has shown really good stuff. Even today, deep throw downfield, the Kyle Juszczyk broke it up. It was like he was a no-fly zone cornerback today. Lenoir was, by all intents and purposes, probably the best player on the field today. Him and Fred Warner were just phenomenal. Moving on to the running backs, Elijah Mitchell got a lot of work today. I thought no highlight plays, but a showcase of what he can do. He's healthy, which is a shock and surprise, but he's healthy. Was a really good receiver today. Found some holes through the offensive line. I mean, he was good. Elijah Mitchell had a really solid day. Again, no highlight plays, but an overall solid day from Elijah Mitchell. Just consistent RB2 type stuff. Jordan Mason, on the other hand, had some highlight plays. Really good day from him as well. You can tell those two guys are kind of in lockstep of, when you perform well, I'm going to push you here. And I think Mitchell, again, all around great day. Jordan Mason, 70-yard touchdown run up the right sideline. This guy was rocking. He sidestepped the tackler, then he beat Taylor Hawkins to angle and break free. So kind of the opposite of Elijah Mitchell, where Mitchell was good the whole day. Jordan Mason although was good the majority of the day, had that one big 70-yard touchdown run where you're like, yes, there's a home run hitter in there somewhere. There's a home run hitter in there somewhere. So we have a question here by Papa J again. Do you see Jordan Mason beating out Mitchell for that second spot? We've talked about this. I think that door is certainly open for Jordan Mason. I think Shanahan's finally kind of buying into the idea of Mason getting a little more run at the RB2 position. And I think he's more comfortable than ever letting Mason be the guy behind Christian McCaffrey. And I can argue that it should have already been that way. But I think Elijah Mitchell will always kind of be Kyle's safety net. Kind of how, Jeff Wilson was, where Jeff Wilson would always give you consistency. It may not be 120 yards and 2 touchdowns, but it'll be 65 to 70 yards, 4 yards a pop, and, he'll be your RB2 or 3. And I think that gives Shanahan some comfortability behind players like Christian McCaffrey and in previous years behind Raheem Mostert, like Mitchell or like Jeff Wilson was. But I think Jordan Mason can bring some more to the offense, at least some power. You don't call someone a closer and liken them to Mariano Rivera, the greatest closer ever, and then not give them reps. It's shocking. I think Mason can bring a little more physicality. It's a different body type. He's big. He's bruising. And I think that for McCaffrey to be a really good player, he's physical in his own self, right? But he's much more he's shifty, he's quick, he's fast on his feet, and he's elusive. But Mason is just, I'm going to run through you. I'm going to run right through you, and you're going to deal with it. And I think, to liken him to a player in past years that I think he's kind of equal to, my heart deep down wants to say Steven Jackson, but that's just crazy. I think an under-the-radar player would be like D'Angelo Williams when he was in Pittsburgh, who was kind of older in his career, but he just run right through you. Strong dude, had some speed like Mason does, and it was the second piece to that Rashard Mendenhall running back room they had. Now, CMC is much, much better than Rashard Mendenhall ever was, but I think Mason could be kind of the thunder to CMC's lightning, if you will, but CMC kind of packs his own thunder and lightning punch. So hopefully you don't need it that much, but he certainly brings something else that Mitchell doesn't. Ricky Pearsall got in on the action, his first reps in team drills and move the ball drills today. It was a good day from Pearsall, or at least I'll say a mixed day, because he had one really nice catch. Brandon Allen threw a little bit behind him over the middle. He leans back, makes the catch for a nice chunk of yardage, and you go, okay, there's Ricky Pearsall. The reps and the routes are always crisp. You know him. He's like a kettle cooked Lay's chip. He is crispy as crispy can be. Right? He's a Pringle in the can still. Just open that sucker up. But he did have a drop today. Not what you want to see. If you're a running back, the quickest way to not play is fumbles. If you're a receiver, the fastest way to not play is drops, and you don't want to see a dropping problem, but it's one practice for him. And I would assume that does not continue, but he was the lone Tanner Mordecai incompletion today because he dropped the football on what would have been a nice gain from Ricky Pearsall, but it was a drop. Two more players here that stood out to me. Ambry Thomas, who got burnt during 1v1s. He got himself an interception today. It was a pass thrown by Josh Dobbs. I think it's Josh Dobbs' fourth interception so far. So I know Purdy has 7 in the last 2 days, but Josh Dobbs has been equally turnover prone and much more concerning in that, despite 2 good days back-to-back before today began. But he was picked off by Ambry Thomas on a pass intended for Tariq Owens. And I do want to give Thomas his credit because he got beat a lot during 1v1s, but to come back, Thomas has always been that player, he's never been one to be good in 1v1s. He always needs the ancillary pieces around him where he can fit in the rotation. He can be the 11th guy on your defense, and you're not going to be too worried. he'll be your weakest link for sure. But he's always been a player that plays much better within the structure of a defense, not in 1v1. So it doesn't shock me there that he struggled against players like Tariq Owens, but he got his back, if you will. Got the interception. It was a nice pick to end practice on for the defense, which I think so far, if my math is correct, again, as some say in the comments, if my math is mathing, if my calculations are correct, I think it's 13 total interceptions so far through 6 practices by the defense. 13. I think it's 15 total turnovers. I mean, Jesus. I get guys haven't been out there. No Trent, inconsistent offensive lines, and no Ayuk, and some vet days for Kittle and McCaffrey. But I mean, this defense is just, it is so hard to walk away and not just fall in love with how they're playing. Now, again, it's training camp and it's day 2 of pads. So what does it mean? Could mean jack squat. But I'm pretty sure it's 15 total takeaways in 6 practices. So they're averaging roughly 3 takeaways per practice. It's pretty darn good. If you usually get 1 takeaway a game, you're probably going to win a lot of games. If you get 3 takeaways per game, you're probably going to be, 18-0, 17-0 walking into the first week of the playoffs. So we'll see how that progresses during preseason and the actual regular season. But man, his defense is good, man. Ball hawks everywhere. And I think, once you get Mooney Ward back in the mix and you hopefully get Hufanga back, things just continue to grow and grow and grow. And if everything goes perfectly with Dre Greenlaw, you get him back later in the season. What would be perfect is if the Niners win the NFC West, they're around 13-4, 12-5, whatever it is, number 1 seed again. They walk into the wild card weekend with no game, but they activate Dre Greenlaw. And you're like, heck yes. But again, that's a long, long ways away before you get there. But I think overall it was a really great practice for the first half for the offense. A lot of great stuff today. 1v1s were spectacular to watch. A lot of great stuff. You can really see what a player can do in 1v1s. It isn't the perfect way to practice, but it gives you a little more insight. Dominick Puni was a big standout. Lenoir, big standout. I just think that, I just can't wait to watch these guys play. Whether it's preseason, whether it's regular season, this team's going to be good. And they're going to be darn good. Again, as they should be, right? But when you watch them get 15 takeaways and you see Purdy be phenomenal then terrible, and that's weird to say, but it makes you get so excited for what's to come, because if they can just bundle that into, 5 months of just perfect football, this team can win the whole thing. The whole thing. Now, you got to get better. You got to practice and perfect your craft, if you will, but really fun stuff to watch, man. Football's back, and the pads are on. Guys are getting bumped around. They're hitting each other, and it's really, really fun. Klee Young asks here in the comments on YouTube, could we be seeing a changing of the guard in our defensive philosophy from the emphasis on defensive line to secondary play? I don't think it's a change of philosophy. I think San Francisco definitely still feels that on defense, they're going to build themselves from the inside out. You go and you get Malik Collins, Leonard Floyd, and Yetur Gross-Matos. You spent some money in the offseason on your defensive line last year. Javon Hargrave. I will say this, though. While Steve Wilks was really good with the secondary in regards to teaching younger players, he was really integral for Lenoir and Ambry Thomas to help them last year, and Jair Brown as well. I do think that people are going to hate this, but I think bringing in Brandon Staley actually is underrated. I get he's not the defensive coordinator. I get, he isn't the biggest name. In fact, he's pretty much hated by Niner fans. But I think that knowing he's working with the defensive backs a lot and knowing that Nick Sorensen, who kind of was the takeaway guy during meetings last year. I think those two things combine really well to a point of, if the Niners can just start taking the ball away, you're going to see Brock Purdy do some crazy things. As Wayne Grant in the comments says, y'all should pay Purdy. And you're right, they'll pay him a lot of money, trust me. But I think, you heard Lenoir talk about today, as Laurie Matthews points out, that, Lenoir called Brandon Staley a genius and said he's like Kyle Shanahan on the defensive side of the ball. Now, that's a big, that's a weird comparison to make for a guy who got destroyed in his last game as a head coach. But I've always said, some guys aren't made to head coach. Some guys are made to be coordinators and assistants here or there. And, it's just the way it goes sometimes. I can tell you this firsthand, it's like you get a new coach in your building and you like him a lot. And then all of a sudden you realize come week 6 or 7, this guy sucks. You buy into what he's preaching to you, but they get overwhelmed. They can't handle the draft process, holding team meetings, and sometimes when they can hyper-focus on one thing and not be spread across the entire world or map, they can be really good and help your team a lot. Brandon Staley, I think, is one of those guys where I think being a head coach, and keep in mind, he was not a normal defensive backs or defensive line or assistant coach for a long time. It was like 1 to 2 years, bang, you're a head coach. I just think that sometimes, some people are made to be managers or bench coaches and this, that, and the other. Some guys are great at starting. Some guys are great at being a special teamer, just who they are. It's how you can fit the pieces in the puzzle, right? And I think Brandon Staley's piece fits in the puzzle of being a really good secondary coach. And we've already seen that so far. Now, how much is that Brandon Staley? Who knows? But I think, when you hear Lenoir gush about a guy enough in Brandon Staley to call him, he's like Kyle Shanahan on the defensive side of things, that's a big statement to make. I think that, for as much as many people don't like Brandon Staley, if he can be an excellent defensive backs coach, man. And Laurie here has a great comparison. Tom Sula, great position coach. I'll even go further. Chris Kocurek, great defensive line coach, never wants to be a head coach. He's comfortable where he's at. He excels. He's perfect almost at his job. So I think we are seeing, through 6 days, mind you, Brandon Staley actually paying off. And you see clips of him coaching guys at the line of scrimmage and how to use their hands and get more leverage. It's really good stuff. Steve Wilkes was really hands-on with the defensive backs last year and let Kocurek do his thing. I think the really good thing about Nick Sorensen is he lets, it's almost like they have 3 different position coaches coaching the same unit at the same time, right? And what I mean by that is Kocurek does the defensive line stuff. Staley does the defensive back stuff. Sorensen, linebacker stuff, and it all comes together into a really pretty picture. And, obviously it's 6 days through practice, but, it makes you excited for week 1 against the Jets. And I cannot wait for, preseason week 1 against, I don't know who they're playing off the top of my head, but it's going to be fun. Really, really, really fun to see what they can do. As always, to end, I want to shout out Jake Moody. 3 for 3 again. 55-yarder. He's 18 for 19 in camp so far. Jake Moody, do your thing. Be perfect. Be 18 for 19 when the year starts. My goodness, you're hitting 55-yarders, 51-yarders. Jake Moody's looking good so far through training camp. Take it over into a live stadium. Jake Moody's going to have himself some fans this season. That's all I have for you today, though. It was a really long practice. It was a grueling practice for the players out there, so much that Tanner Mordecai got reps. We'll check in the next time that happens for Laurie Matthews and Larry Kruger's sake. But it was really good stuff today. It was a long practice. Great to see the ups and the downs, the roller coaster ride that has been the offense so far. I love it. It's good to follow along to, good to watch, and it's really, really gets you pumped up for the NFL season. As always, though, Follow us on social media at 49ers_access is the Twitter. 49ers.access is the Instagram. If you could like, share, and subscribe to the YouTube channel, hit that bell notification the next time we go live so you know when we go live. If you're listening on the podcast platforms, go leave us a 5-star review. Put whatever you want in the comments. Tell us what you had for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I do not care. Give us 5 stars. Tell us what you think. And you can use our promo code 49ersaccess, 49 ERSACCESS at SeatGeek.com to save yourself $20 off your first purchase at SeatGeek.com. I want to thank people in the comments like Jimmy, Rob Smith, Khalil Young, Lori Matthews, Papa J. The Ramily was in here a little later. Wayne Grant. Just a lot of great people in the comments. Thank you so much for following along through the 7th day of training camp. It means so much. And as always, tomorrow we have practice. Come right back here to the same YouTube channel, the same bat channel tomorrow. Cannot wait to talk about Niners practice number 7 on practice number 8 of day number 9 of training camp. But until next time, as always, my name is Sterling Bennett, and stay faithful.